Good morning, boys and girls. I am Eleanor Hawkins, and welcome to Telestory Time. You know, I keep talking to you about joining the summer reading program at your public library. Well, this next week is a very important week because it's near the end of the summer reading program, and we want you to register because you know if you practice reading this summer, you will become a better reader and a better student at school. So any of you boys and girls ages 3 through 12, be sure and talk with your parents about going to register at your public library summer reading program. And you boys and girls 3 through 5, that's a Read to Me program. And so you get credit for all the books that are read to you. So have fun reading and go and register for the summer reading program. And now I see it's time for me to read to you. And our very first story this morning is entitled Little Brown Bear. Once there was a little brown bear who lived in the deep woods in the snug tree house with his mama and his papa. Now every morning Little Brown Bear ate his mush and drank his juice and wiped his whiskers, and his mama and papa did too. Every morning after breakfast, Papa buttoned his vest and went out the door with his fishing pole over his shoulder down to the river to catch fish. But Little Brown Bear had to stay at home and help Mama pick blackberries up on the hill. Every night Papa came home with a basket of fish. Mama cooked the fish in her big black frying pan and made a pie from the blackberries that she and Little Brown Bear had picked. And then they all ate the fish and the pie for supper. And Mama always said that Papa was the best fisherman in the whole world. But one morning Little Brown Bear said, "I'm tired of picking blackberries. I want to go down to the river to fish." "A little brown bear is too small to go down to the river to fish," laughed Papa. "You must be big and strong to fish." Then Papa buttoned his vest and went out the door with his fishing pole over his shoulder. "I am big and strong," cried Little Brown Bear to his mama. "I want to go down the river to fish." "A little brown bear is much too small to go down to the river to fish," said Mama. "What if you fell in and were swept away over the dangerous falls? You must stay home with your mama." But Little Brown Bear did not. He took down his papa's spare fishing pole and he tiptoed out of the door and down to the river to see if he could fish. But where Papa went left, Little Brown Bear went right, so that his papa would not see him. Little Brown Bear sat on a log by the river and waited and waited. The black flies bit his nose and the grasses tickled and itched. When lunchtime came, he had no lunch, but Little Brown Bear sat quiet and still with his papa's spare fishing pole. The sun began to travel down the other side of the sky. Little Brown Bear's arms were tired from holding the fishing pole for so long. Still, he waited and waited. The air grew cool and the locusts sang. Little Brown Bear was almost ready to give up and go home when suddenly a big fish did bite his hook. That fish thrashed and pulled. It pulled Little Brown Bear and his fishing pole over the log, into the water, and down the river straight towards those dangerous falls. Down, down, down through the water went Little Brown Bear, but still he held tight to Papa's spare fishing pole. The sound of the rushing falls came closer and closer and closer. "Oh," cried Little Brown Bear, "if only Papa were here." And then, just as he was about to go right over the falls, Little Brown Bear felt big, strong paws pulling him out of the water. "There is my Little Brown Bear," cried Papa. "There is my spare fishing pole, and there is a big fish." And Papa hugged his Little Brown Bear with strong, furry arms. When Papa pulled in the line, the fish on the end of the line was so big that Little Brown Bear had to help. Papa scratched his ears. Who said a Little Brown Bear was too small to go down to the river to fish? You did, laughed Little Brown Bear. Still, growled Papa, what if you had been swept over those dangerous falls? You must fish with your papa. That night, Mama had to cook Little Brown Bear's fish outdoors because it was too big to fit in her frying pan. Mama rubbed her nose. Who said a Little Brown Bear was too small to go down to the river to fish? You did, laughed Little Brown Bear. Just the same, growled Mama. You were almost swept over those dangerous falls. You must fish with your papa, and you must tell your mama before you go. The next evening when Papa came home, he carried his big old fishing pole over his shoulder. On the other shoulder, he carried a small new fishing pole, just the right size for Little Brown Bear. And when they all sat down to supper, Mama brought out a new red vest, just right for a Little Brown Bear to go fishing in. Now every morning, Little Brown Bear and his mama and his papa eat their mush and drink their juice and wipe their whiskers. Then Little Brown Bear and his papa button their vests, go out the door with their fishing poles over their shoulders, and down to the river to fish. And Mama always says that they are the two very best fishermen in the whole wide world. And that, boys and girls, is the story of Little Brown Bear. And now stay tuned, and we'll be back in just a moment to show you books from the shelves of your public library. Boys and girls, our bookshelf this morning is made up of books about fish. And the very first one I want to show you is entitled A Child's Book of Fishes. And inside we have nice illustrations. As you can see, here's a seahorse. Over here are ocean sunfish. And then on over we have all kinds of fish that we see and can actually catch in our ocean. Yes, this is a very good book entitled A Child's Book of Fishes. Our next book is an easy-to-read book, and it's entitled You Can Catch a Fish. And inside, it just tells us everything we need to know about fishing. This tells us about going down by the pond to do our fishing. And then on over, it tells us all about the fishing things that we need, the equipment. And there's a fishing pole, and of course we need, it says worms, worms, worms. And all the way through you can see it tells us everything we need to know about fishing. And the title is You Can Catch a Fish. Our next book is entitled Starfish, Seashells, and Crabs. And this is a very attractive book, as you can see. Beautiful pictures all the way through, so that we can learn all about starfish, all about moon shells, and all about periwinkles, a beautiful seashell. And as you can see, this can help you identify those beautiful shells that you pick up on the beach. Yes, this is the book entitled Starfish, Seashells, and Crabs. And then I brought along this little book entitled The Little Mermaid. And of course, this is a very, very good Hans Christian Andersen fairy tale. And inside, this happens to be a pop-up book, beautifully illustrated. Yes, this is the story that we all love, The Little Mermaid. Then this is a very large book. It's entitled Life in the Water. And inside you can see it answers our questions. Why do minnows swim around together? And on over, why does this fish puff up? And you can see that it answers many of our questions. And it is the book Life in the Water. And then last of all, I brought along this book, and it shows a picture of Cape Hatteras here. And inside, it tells us all about the land and people of North Carolina. So when you go fishing, you might go down to the coast, and you might get to see Cape Hatteras. Yes, boys and girls, any of these books can be checked out from any of the 9 libraries in the Craven-Pamlico Carteret Regional Library System. Be sure and use your library card sometime during next week and check out some very good books. And now stay tuned, and we'll be back with another story in just a moment. Now, boys and girls, I'm going to read you one of my very favorite picture stories. Yes, it's entitled The Surprise in the Storybook. There was once a house with a mouse in it, a little gray mouse. There was a boy in the house too, and a little girl, and a mother and a father. And there was no cat in this house, thank goodness. There was a cat next door, but there was a bell on the cat. And sometimes the cat came to see the boy and the girl, and then the bell went ting-a-ling, ting-a-ling, ting-a-ling. It was easy for the little mouse to keep away from that cat. Little Gray Mouse was very happy in the house. He liked the boy and the girl. He liked the good things the mother cooked. He liked his cozy little home in the wall. And then there was something he liked best of all. Best of all, he liked the bedtime story hour. Every night the father took out a big storybook with beautiful pictures. And every night he heard a story. He heard a story that was read to the boy and the girl. Every night the little gray mouse came out of his home in the wall to hear the story. Sometimes the story was about clowns. Sometimes the story was about animals. Sometimes the story was about a prince and a princess. And sometimes the story was about boys and girls of long ago. Every morning Little Gray Mouse thought about the story he would hear that night. Would it be the 3 little pigs? Or would it be the little red hen? Or maybe it might be Cinderella. Little Gray Mouse liked them all. But it was hard to wait for the bedtime story. One morning Little Gray Mouse said, maybe I can just peek at the pictures. And he ran to the room of the boy and the girl, right to the storybook. What a good time he had. He saw pictures of Cinderella. He knew that story. He saw pictures of the 3 little pigs. He knew that story. He saw pictures of the little red hen. He knew that story too. But then Little Gray Mouse stopped. What was this? It was a picture of 3 bears, a little bear, a middle-sized bear, and a big bear. There was a little girl in the picture too. I do not know this story, said the mouse. Oh, I do wish I could hear it. I hope the father reads this story tonight. But that night the boy wanted to hear Cinderella again. And the next night the little girl wanted to hear the Three Little Pigs. Little Gray Mouse thought he would never get to hear the story he wanted. Then one night the father took out the storybook and he began to read. Once upon a time there were 3 bears. That's it, thought the little gray mouse. That's my story. And he sat very, very still. The pages are stuck together, boys and girls. The bears in the story went for a walk. The little girl saw the bear's house in the woods. She did not know it was the bear's house, so she went in. But now the bears were coming back. Oh my, thought the mouse, what will they do now? He just could not wait to find out. Ting-a-ling, ting-a-ling, ting-a-ling. It was the cat next door. He was coming into the house. As fast as the bell went ting, little gray mouse ran back to his home in the wall. The little mouse sat in his cozy little mouse house till the cat went home. Then he ran out. He could not wait to hear the rest of the story, but the boy and the girl were asleep. The story was over. Oh dear, said the little gray mouse. What did the 3 bears do next? And what did the little girl do next? He just had to find out. So the very next night, little gray mouse ran into the room and sat very still. He could not wait to hear all about the 3 bears. But the father did not read the 3 bears. He read Cinderella. Oh dear, said the mouse. Now the next night he ran into the room again and he sat very, very still. He wanted to hear the rest of the story of the 3 bears. But the father read the Little Red Hen. Oh dear, said the mouse again. And the next morning he ran over to the big storybook. He looked and he looked at the pictures of the 3 bears. Now what did the little girl do in the bear's house? And what did the bears do next? I must find out, said the little gray mouse. I must. And he looked all around the room. Now he saw blocks and he saw a ball, a train and a doll and a truck and a beautiful dollhouse. And then he saw a ribbon, a bright red ribbon. I know what I can do, said Little Gray Mouse. Oh, he was so happy, he jumped up and down on the storybook. Now the next night the father took out the big storybook. He saw the red ribbon. Look, he said to the girl, here is your ribbon. I didn't put it there, said the little girl. I didn't put it there, said the little boy. Well, what was the father going to do? Would he read Cinderella again? Would he read the 3 Little Pigs? Or would he read a story about a clown or a prince? The little gray mouse could not wait to find out. Well, said the father, the ribbon is right at the story of the 3 bears. So that is the story I will read. Now, no one looked around the room. No one saw the little gray mouse. But there he sat, very, very still and very, very happy. And now, at last, he was going to find out all about the 3 bears. And do you know, boys and girls, to this day, the 3 bears is the little gray mouse's favorite story. And that is the story of the surprise in the storybook. And now stay tuned and we'll be back in just a moment. now, boys and girls, I'm going to read you the story, The House in Willow Wood. Wiggin was tired of living at home. It was so noisy with all his 7 brothers and sisters romping around. And after the twins came, the little house in Willow Wood was just too crowded. Besides, there was so much work to be done. Wiggin had to work in the garden. He had to sweep the front steps and help dry the dishes. The other bunnies helped too, and they thought it was fun, but Wiggin just felt sorrier and sorrier for himself. "Why are you so sad, Wiggin?" asked Mother Bunny one day. "Because our house is too noisy and crowded," said Wiggin, "and I have to work so hard." "Well, now you could go and live with Uncle Robert," said Mother Bunny. "He lives all alone in that huge house on Clover Hill. I'll send a letter by the carrier pigeon and tell him that you are coming." So, right after lunch, Wiggin packed his little suitcase and started off. He hopped down the lane and across the sunny meadow. A white cloud floated like a flag on top of Clover Hill. Halfway up was Uncle Robert's big house. Uncle Robert was on the terrace, and he was swinging lazily in a hammock. "Make yourself at home, my boy," he mumbled sleepily. Mrs. Hoppy, the housekeeper, will show you to your room." "Oh, thank you, Uncle Robert," said Wiggin. And he followed Mrs. Hoppy into the house and up the wide staircase. And at the top was a long hall with dozens of rooms on either side. "Help yourself, sir," said Mrs. Hoppy, and off she went. Now Wiggin chose a front room with fat green cabbages on the wallpaper, and then he ran to the window. "Maybe I can see our house," he thought. But Willow Wood looked far, far away. When he went to the terrace, Uncle Robert was sound asleep. Wiggin sat down beside the sundial and waited for him to wake up. There was no sound but the buzz of a golden bee in the honeysuckle vine. After a while, Uncle Robert woke up. "Shall I go work in the garden?" Wiggin asked. "Oh, certainly not," said Uncle Robert. "The gardener does all that." "Well, shall I sweep the front steps?" "Mrs. Hoppy does that," said Uncle Robert. "You just enjoy yourself, my boy, while I read the newspapers." He put his glasses on his long nose and began to read. Wiggin tried to enjoy himself. He dabbled his paw in the goldfish pond. He picked a daisy and counted the petals. It wasn't much fun being all alone, and he was glad when Mrs. Hoppy called them to dinner. After dinner, Uncle Robert says, "It's my bedtime. I'll see you in the morning, my boy." Wiggin went out on the terrace and sat down in the hammock. The night was very still, and no sound but the chirp of a lonely cricket on the hillside. Far off at the edge of Willow Wood, there were tiny lights twinkling. "That's our house," thought Wiggin. "Mother is reading a bedtime story, and oh, I'm lonesome." And a big tear rolled down his cheek. Now the next morning, breakfast was quiet and peaceful. There was no sound but the rustle of Uncle Robert's morning newspaper. Wiggin stared at his oatmeal. And just then Mrs. Hoppy laid a letter beside Wiggin's plate. "Special delivery. Came by carrier pigeon. It's a letter from your mama, and she says there's a surprise for you at home." Now he packed his little suitcase and said goodbye. And then he skipped down Clover Hill and across the sunny meadow. And when he ran up the lane, he saw the surprise. Father Bunny had built a whole new wing onto the end of that little house. "And now we have plenty of room," cried Mother Bunny, giving him a big hug. Father and the boys were on the roof nailing down the last shingles. The girls were putting up the curtains, and there was a great deal of shouting and commotion. "I guess our yard is the noisiest and busiest place in the whole world," cried Wiggin. "And I guess I'm the happiest bunny in the whole world. I'll never, never leave home again." And that, boys and girls, is the story of The House in Willow Wood. And now I see I have time enough to remind you to be sure and register for the summer reading program at your library, in any of the 9 libraries in the Craven-Pamlico Carteret Regional Library System. And be sure and remind your parents to take you. And now we close our book of stories for this morning. Until next Saturday morning, This is Eleanor Hawkins saying bye-bye for Telestory Time.